What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter at _Cuesta30. You can find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. And if you want to listen to any other past episodes of Sports Opinions, you can find us on Spreaker, YouTube, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Google Play Music. With me today is a fantastic writer. I actually just talked to him a little more, and he just took over a website that I used to write for. I've talked about it, nothingbutnets.com. They're under the fan-sided umbrella, and he is now the site expert, is Mr. Phil Watson. What's up, Phil?
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Phil, where can, obviously, Nothing But Nets, they can find your writing there, but where else can people find you?
NothingbutNets.com is where to find the writing from me and handful of really good contributors we have. You can find me on Twitter at PhilWatsonFS. The site Twitter is at NetsBlogFS.
Yes, and if you're a Nets fan, they're a great follow. NetsBlog, they cover everything that it is about the Nets, and if you want any up-to-the-minute stories, any breaking news, they cover it right there, so it's a great website.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm hoping we just keep getting better.
Absolutely. And so if anyone can expect, obviously, if you've listened to this, people know that I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. Phil is, the site expert for the Nets, and he's also a Nets fan. He's been a Nets fan since the 70s, so he's had the good, the bad, the torture of going through our ups, and then one of the worst deals in the history of sports to get into the NBA, two finals appearances, and now where we are. So how has the roller coaster been of being a Nets fan?
It has been wild. I still remember being a kid when it first started breaking that, oh my God, the Nets are going to the NBA. And then the other shoe fell. They were the defending ABA champs, had won 2 out of the last 3 ABA titles. We get to the NBA, trade for Tiny Archibald. Everything is looking fantastic. And then we have to sell Dr. J. And
the rest is history there.
Things go downhill fast.
And, people that listen to this, if they're Knicks fans, they might be laughing and like, oh, yeah, Nets, who cares? The Nets have had some great players in our history, not just Dr. J. We're going to kind of touch on one of the guys that I really like in Nets history. I wasn't quite old enough to watch him, but Drazen Petrovic, you obviously remember his greatness. He's gone way too soon.
Fantastic. Gone way too soon. One of those, it was one of those Nets bad luck things that if you're that type of person, you can convince yourself that the franchise is cursed. That was such a tragic loss, though.
Yeah, and I listen to people.
He was coming off a fantastic year, had made All-NBA, was an All-Star, had started to really figure the NBA game out, was getting much better even on the defensive end, which, even he admitted he didn't really care much about early in his NBA career. And they had Coleman, they had Kenny Anderson, the pieces were there, and then it all just blew apart almost overnight, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, that was definitely a contending championship roster with him there, and I've even heard certain commentators on the various, like ESPN, I listen to The Fan also, and when they talk about pure scorers, they bring up Kevin Durant a lot and things like that, and you'll hear Drazen Petrovic's name thrown out there as one of the greatest pure scorers of all time. The fact that we talk about all these guys that are amazing scorers now in the NBA, but certain people are like, no, we've seen this before. We've seen people who make scoring look easy from any part of the court in any which way at all. And he wore a Nets jersey, and people don't really know that.
Oh, yeah. Drazen could hit the three. He was one of the best three-point shooters in the league in his era. He could drive past anybody. He went to the rack with authority. He had a really good, solid mid-range game. As a scorer, he was as fundamentally sound on all areas of the offensive game that you've ever seen. He was that good. It's not just an urban legend.
Yeah, I wish
really was that good.
Wish I was alive to actually see him. I was alive for 4 years of the end of his. He passed in 93, 94.
Yes,
I was 93. I was 4 years old. I was born in 88. So it was I wasn't aware enough to understand what he really was. The Nets teams that I started to grow up with were the Derek Coleman teams, were the Anderson teams, where they were still a decent team. They just weren't the contending team that they should have been.
Right. They were that team that would get that 7 or 8 spot, get crushed in the first round, lather, rinse, repeat for a few years there.
Yeah, and right now, for our current Nets team, that would actually be a huge step in the right direction. So we're going to go a little bit to our current Brooklyn Nets. And the Dwight Mayer seems like it's finally over after 7 full years of hell. Where it comes to 6-7 years ago, the Nets, under the tutelage of Mr. Billy King, the Nets were all in. They had Darren Williams. They wanted to pair him with arguably the second or third best player in the NBA at the time, Dwight Howard. There was the deal set. He was ready to go. He got cold feet, and the rest is history. Fast forward to 2 days ago. I think it was two or 3 days ago. Dwight Howard is now traded to the Brooklyn Nets for the bloated contract of Timothy Mozgov, who was a bench warmer for the Nets. And subsequently, the next day, it was reported that Howard was getting bought out. You had 2 great articles on Nothing But Nets covering this. I have to say, I follow all the Nets stuff on my Twitter, and after Woj dropped the Woj bomb about that trade, I'm pretty sure you were the first Nets reporter that I saw putting anything out about this, any sort of analytical thing about this. And then even after the buyout came out, you had that covered right away. So since you definitely were intimate with this, the expiring contract that Howard has is a $23.8 million expiring contract at the end of this year. They're going to work out a buyout. We shed Timothy Mozgov, who had 2 more years left, roughly $32 million left on it. Gave away 2 second-rounders. We have a bevy of those, so it's not a big deal, and some cash. For you, what does this whole entire situation with the trade, shedding cash, and then the buyout mean that where were the Brooklyn Nets going in the future under Sean Marks right now?
Well, the biggest thing, and I put this out when the trade happened on Wednesday, that the worst case scenario was not that bad a one. And that is, you buy out Dwight, you take the cap hit, and you free up the future space for 2019 because it gets the Nets out from under that $16.7 million 4th year of Mozgov's deal. And, the fact that you're giving that deal back to Mitch Kupchak is just, that's just a beautiful twist of karma. Because he's the guy that signed him to that thing in the first place. It potentially frees up 2 max salary slots for the summer of 19. And it also gets a player who was publicly complaining about his role out of the picture, and that can't be bad for the culture in the locker room moving forward. Unhappy players on a small group like a basketball team, one unhappy guy can turn into 5 unhappy guys very quickly.
Now, it's a good thing that it doesn't seem like the Brooklyn Nets are an unhappy team. Now, Timothy Mozgov was noticeably absent from the, it seemed like the team outing where, I think it was, who was it? Jalen Rose said that, wouldn't want to go to the Brooklyn Nets. They're a losing team. They're not happy. And then it just seems like the waves came with Spencer Dinwiddie, with Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, all basically attacking Jalen Rose and saying, hey, you know what? I guess a team that's super together, not together, does things like this, where basically the whole Nets roster, Jeremy Lin, D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, you can go up and down,
right,
met together, and noticeably absent was Timothy Mozgov, so that's kind of telling of what was going on.
To be fair to Mozgov, he did host everybody out in his house at L.A. in May.
And, that goes to also show with the culture, and I don't blame Mozgov because he's not too far removed from being the second best player in the first Cleveland Finals when LeBron was back. We forget that when Kyrie was out, Love was out, Matthew Dellavedova and Timothy Mozgov were the people that stepped up and gave the Cavs any sort of a chance against Golden State in that first Finals matchup. So it's really interesting how far he's come. So, he was he complained, and it's something where Marks wants to build a culture of positivity, of hard work, and that just doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, I don't knock the guy for wanting to play. You're a professional athlete. Your job is to play. Dude got off the bench one time after the All-Star break. So, I can understand the frustration. It's not, these guys have professional pride. They have confidence. They have egos. They think they're better than the guys in front of them. So if he gets a chance to play in Charlotte, good on him. He was a complete pro during the season, kept his mouth shut, showed up every day, did what he was asked to do, and I certainly have no ill will toward the guy.
Absolutely not. All things considered, it looked like he was a very good teammate because, like you said, after the All-Star break, he didn't really play. But every time the benches went there, he wasn't that guy that hung outside of the huddle. That he was engaged. He was sitting in there. He was listening to what Coach Atkinson had to say, drawing up plays. He was always active. It never seemed like he turned away Jarrett Allen, who essentially took his spot whenever there was any, there seemed to be no ill will between those two. So I do have to agree with you. He's a consummate pro. And yeah, I hope he does get a chance to play. At this point in his career, he's probably a 20-minute max guy, but I think he's good enough on some teams to get maybe 20 minutes a game and just be a contributor in that way. But his defense, I think, is really what doomed him because he's a big body and he's someone that I think the Nets wanted to get more rebounding and more defense out of, and he did not provide that at all.
Right. No, he's a big body with concrete feet. And in today's NBA, you can't survive like that.
And we had a guy that did that. Brook Lopez was similar, but at least Brook Lopez averaged 20 a game.
Right. He could make up for those defensive deficiencies at the other end, and he could also block a shot or two. So, Mozgov's not a rim protector at all.
No, his athletic ability is very limited, where Brook Lopez is sneakily athletic. But I just wanted to ask you, so you mentioned that potentially 2 max contracts could be opened up for the 2019 offseason, and that's given that I think Sean Marks is going to make those moves. I believe he has to, let go of a few contracts. I think it's 4 different players that he has to kind of let go of their money, which with the rebuilding roster and an ever fluxing roster where you're just trying to figure out who your core is, none of those players are really core guys, so they're okay to let go. But,
right, yeah, it's expiring contracts that he has to renounce, basically.
Yeah, he's probably going to do that. Now, my main question to you is, and it's all well and dandy that we'll have space for 2 max contracts. But what's to say that there's players that want to come to Brooklyn, max-level players, and assuming that we're not going to overpay for some mid-level players that could be very good, but we don't know. If you're going to give people max deals, you need to know that they're going to be players. So what's to say that the Brooklyn Nets are an attractive enough team that we're going to get max-level players?
There's still going to be several teams dealing with a tight cap next summer because those teams went insane in 2016 during the summer of ridiculous cash.
Yeah.
There may not be a lot of destination for guys wanting to move to a new situation and get a max or near max deal. And Brooklyn has done a really good job of getting out of the cap hell that Billy King left it under. They're creating a positive culture. If you can get 2-star caliber players who want to come to a big market as a package and be part of something fresh, I think it's doable. There's a lot of ifs to that, but I think it's doable. The Nets, they have a lot of historical baggage to overcome. We all get that. But if they can make some on-the-court strides this year, continue to develop some of the young guys, yeah, it's not inconceivable the Nets could be a destination next summer.
Now, Sean Marks is kind of a genius in terms of everything he's done since he's come here, and I think he's really becoming the type of GM. He's getting, I think I tweeted out from the Sports Opinions page a little bit ago, that he's getting to the Danny Ainge level where there's no reason to do a deal with him because you're not going to come out on top. He hasn't made a deal that has ended as a net negative at all in his net tenure. They've all come out, they've all been a plan. They've all been to get out of cap hell and slowly but surely get better. So, and even his misses, the Jahlil Okafor, that was a miss. We're probably not bringing Okafor back, and that's fine. but they're not big misses that they're going to be a detriment. So my question to you is, why the hell would any other GM want to do a deal with Sean Marks anymore?
I don't know. Why does anybody do a deal with Danny Ainge anymore?
It's crazy. It's kind of like, I equate that to the Patriots.
That's the guy who I really see Marks as having gone to school on, and that's his former boss in San Antonio, R.C. Buford.
Yep.
Very similar styles. Have a plan. Don't deviate from it. Don't be afraid to take those low-risk, high-reward chances. You know, Jahlil Okafor was a low risk. At worst, you were taking him on for the last 5 months of his deal. If he works out, you have a top 3 pick who, you know, can be a cornerstone for you. If it doesn't work out, he walks away, you renounce him, and you're done with him, and he becomes somebody else's issue.
Yeah, now what I like about Sean Marks so far, and Kenny Atkinson as well, is their relationship seems to be a very good one, honestly. Because what I see is a player like Jahlil Okafor, his stature, his, you know, where he came from, what his pick number was, he was a very high draft pick. It could easily be a situation like our crosstown rivals, who seem to be the Knicks. They seem to be on a much better level. Their front office is much better. But they have that stick in the mud named James Dolan, who tampers with everything that goes on. Now, our Russian billionaire did do that, but he's said that he's going to take a step back, and he's going to let Sean Marks do his thing. And in turn, Marks seems to be letting Kenny Atkinson do his thing, because Jahlil Okafor rode the bench for a majority of his time as a Brooklyn Net last year. And there are other teams that would not let that happen. Jahlil Okafor is still a big name, and last year it could have been a great redemption story. There's other teams that would maybe have come down on Kenny Atkinson and said, you need to play this guy a minimum 25 minutes a game. Get him on the floor. We're not going to win anyway. I don't care. I want money. But it seems like they have a good enough relationship where Sean Marks gets the people, they agree with who they want to get, but then it's Kenny Atkinson's decision what actually happens to them. So this situation just seems like a positive all around. But one thing that scares me is last year the Nets made strides as a team. They played better basketball. We're going to have the runner-up and most improved player of the year in Spencer Dinwiddie. Victor Oladipo has run away with that award in my eyes. If he doesn't win it, it's a tragedy. But Spencer should take second because he did make so many strides. He was the best assist-to-turnover ratio per 40 minute or per 36-minute games. He had the best ratio, I think, in the NBA. He finished up with that. He's played very well in the absence of D'Angelo Russell for long strides, Jeremy Lin. We should be getting those two back. My fear is we finally own our first-round pick again. Next year, the Nets make more strides as young team gets better, and then we become a middling team, and we don't have that top lottery pick, which kind of scares me a little, because now we finally have our first-round pick back, and we could still be picking in the 20s or the mid-teens. How good do you think the Nets can be next season?
Well, I'm with you. The first temptation is to think that the organization is going to want to maximize the value of that pick. That's a very polite way of saying tank.
Yep. Can't say the T word, Phil. Can't say it. You're not allowed.
Right. But everything that Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson have said since the end of last season indicates that they want to see significant improvement on the court in year 3. Whether that means they're competing for a playoff spot or just getting to 35 wins or so, that remains to be seen. But I think that's the thinking for freeing up the cap space. You're not going to get that premier top 5 pick unless there's some lottery magic involved. So you take the next step in improving the product by bringing in guys who are at a higher level than the guys you currently have. Yeah. I see those two working together.
Absolutely, and they seem to have a great relationship lately. Neither of them step on each other's toes. They're always in unison when it comes to sending a message. Now, I'm going to throw out some names from some guys on the roster, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my opinion of what I expect next year, and I'm going to see if you kind of agree with that. First guy I'm going to talk about, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. He made strides in year 2 to become a better overall player. In the beginning, his defense kind of lacked because I think he was focusing on the offensive end a little too much. He got a little hurt, came back and played really well. For me, the next level, he needs to become a star. More than what D'Angelo Russell is, because D'Angelo Russell is going to take some time still. I think Rondae Hollis-Jefferson needs to become the leader of this basketball team before we get those max guys. Do you agree that the next step is stardom for him?
I am not entirely sure the mechanics of his shot is going to allow him to leap all the way to stardom. I see him as a guy who is the defensive leader on the floor, a guy who fits as either a hellacious defender on the wing as a 3 or a very competent small ball 4. But I don't think he's ever going to be the scorer that you need to be the star. I see him as a guy who could be a solid 2, solid 3 option and be the guy who's the emotional leader, run the defense, that sort of thing. I really think that's where his ceiling is. I would love to be wrong, but I just don't see that shot improving markedly at this point.
Now, Karis LeVert last year is another name I'm throwing at you. I'm starting off with these young guys. He did a very good job becoming a point guard, which his rookie year, he was forced into that role a little bit and very struggled. He struggled mightily as a rookie, taking over some point guard duties. He turned the ball over a lot. Last year, much better with the turnovers in terms of him handling the ball and running the offense. He ran the offense more confident. He does have the ability to make some showtime assists. His big leap is he has a guy named Alan Crabb ahead of him, basically on the depth chart. Alan Crabb plays from 3, but he's a natural 2. Is Karis LeVert going to be good enough and take the next level as a scorer to kind of turn Crabb into a 6-man? Or is he still going to kind of waddle as a 6-man first bench option?
I think LeVert is going to settle in at either the I was thinking more as a 3, but since the Nets just drafted 2 big 3s, I'm not entirely sure about that, but I can see LeVert passing Crabb in terms of production and maybe in terms of minutes. I mean, Crabb was a desperate overpay, but he was also a good improvement for them. You know, he was a restricted guy. You had to make the contract unattractive for Portland. I get that. I also see Crabb probably taking his option next year to get the last 18.9, I believe it is.
Yep, something like that.
And it's high 18s, and then I see the Nets letting him walk away because LeVert's the future at the 2.
All right, the final guy I'm going to give you is kind of out of left field because I'm not going to talk about D'Angelo Russell. We know his expectations. We want him to be the star in the next phase of the team before those max guys, and then bring those 2 max guys in to be the big 3 with D'Lo. So that's his expectation. Jeremy Lin, we want him to come back healthy and just be his consistent self and eventually be the steady bench veteran, sometimes starter, that can run the show. This guy is a question mark for me because he was a bat out of hell his rookie year when he was forced to step in. He was supposed to be a G Leaguer, stepped in, played very well as a rookie, spent a lot of time in the G League last year, and is looking to come back this year. That's Isaiah Whitehead. Where is he? He's an explosive scorer. He has not fixed the turnovers yet at the NBA level, but his effort is something that is hard to ignore. He has a lot of guys ahead of him with LeVert, with Lin, with Russell, with Spencer Dinwiddie. Does he have a future on the Brooklyn Nets, or is he someone that is kind of destined to be on another team?
I think he's destined to ride the LIE for another year, and then fade away unless they can make some sort of a deal for him. I just see too many guys in front of him that don't come with the question marks. You know, if you give me an Isaiah Whitehead who can take care of the ball, he's a terrific player. You give me the Isaiah Whitehead we've seen the first 2 years, can get a little out of control. I mean, he's explosive.
He's Marshawn Brooks. That's a very good comparison. I think it's a good comparison. Yeah, Marshawn Brooks.
I think that's a very good comparison. He's Marshawn Brooks without the press clipping.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, you know, if you can't depend on a guy to take care of the ball, you can't depend on a guy.
Exactly. Turnovers are the biggest thing.
And with all the guards in front of him, on top of that, he's going to have an amazing summer training camp preseason to move up in the pecking order at all.
He's probably the biggest guy hoping that Spencer Dinwiddie does get traded away, which is a big rumor. I would like them to hold on to Spencer. I think he's a fantastic option. I think you can play a two-guard system with him where D'Angelo Russell could be a more natural scorer and he can run the offense. But if you can get good enough pieces for him, I wouldn't trade him away for anything but a first-rounder or a right-away contributor, a stretch 4 contributor. But that's just me. That's my thinking.
That would be what I'm thinking too, because he gives you so many options. He can play the 2. He can play the 1 and allow one of those other guys, the more score first ones in Lynn and Russell, to play off the ball a little bit. He's a solid defender, handles well. And yeah, he's a guy who could definitely, he's definitely a plus player to have, and he's not untouchable, but you want to make sure it's the right deal.
Without a doubt.
That it fills a need for you, either in terms of a future very valuable asset, a number 1 unprotected one, or a stretch big. That's really what they're lacking right now. If there was one piece that they're just desperately lacking, it's a stretch big.
And interestingly enough, that gets us right into the NBA draft, because the Nets picked up 2 players that in this current NBA could definitely fill the role of stretch big. Their 2 picks, they had the 29th pick. I'm going to butcher both of their names. Zanan Musa from Bosnia. He's a forward, 6'9", 195-pound, 19-year-old, I believe. And then they picked a 20-year-old from Latvia, Radians. I don't know how to say these. You probably have a better idea, Phil. Radians, correct?
I think I'm fairly confident on both of these. The DZ is a J sound.
Oh, okay.
It's John and Musa.
Oh.
And Radian's Kurics.
So we have 2 of the coolest names in the NBA already. But both of them are 6'9". Kurics is a little bit bigger. He's listed at 210 pounds. But I can't see any reason why there's guys like Draymond Green at 6'9", 6'8" that play center. These 2 guys could definitely fill the stretch 4 need. They're both scorers. Sean Marks scouted internationally hard. This is kind of his Spurs influence. Really going international. And he came out publicly and said both of these guys are expected to play for the Brooklyn Nets this year. They will be on the roster. So that tells us 2 things. One, it tells us their confidence in their scoring ability and Kenny Atkinson to develop them. And 2, that some of those people we talked about renouncing those expiring contracts, at least 2 of them are as good as gone, because you need to free up that space on the roster. So your opinions on these 2 guys, are you as confident? What do you know about them and Marks that they can actually come in and play meaningful basketball for the Nets?
Well, I know Marks was big on Kurics last year when he was in the draft the first time and then withdrew. And he personally scouted Musa this year. I'm not sure I would expect huge contributions from these guys this year. They both need to add strength and defense to their resume, really, before they can be counted on for major minutes. Kurics has had a couple of knee issues already while he was with Barcelona. But that said, like I wrote about earlier today, I really liked how they presented themselves at that introductory presser today.
Oh, the quotes were great out of those things.
Sometimes those Euro kids, and even the domestic kids, can be a little bit deer in the headlight-ish at that first introductory press conference. And these guys, they were engaged, they were confident, they answered everything that was thrown at them, and you could really tell these are 2 guys that are young, 19 and 20, but you can definitely tell they've been professionals for a while.
Now,
and they both have been pros since they were 16.
Didn't Kuric say he was going to kick Porzingis' ass, which is fantastic?
Oh, that was great. That was great because they play together for the Latvian national team.
Yeah.
So they know each other. But he said, I like playing with him, and I'm going to like playing against him because I'm going to kick his ass.
That's just great. That's what you want to hear. And, there's something to be said about these European kids. Like you said, they've already been pros, and I think that's an advantage that they have in Europe. They let these young kids, they have so many different divisions within their pro leagues. It's not like us where the G League is a kind of a dirty word. Like, if you go to the G League, you got a lot of work to do, you're in trouble, you barely have any hope.
You're done.
These in Europe, they do it differently. Number one, their soccer teams own the basketball teams. Like, it's the same exact correlation. Real Madrid, FC Barcelona, they're very much intertwined with each other. They're the same owners. Right. And they have the second league. And the second league isn't a dirty word there. It's your 15, 16, 17-year-olds. Yeah, there's some older over-the-hill players that are just still playing. But for the most part, it's a true developmental league to get up to the top levels of the EuroLeague. So we can learn something from that, and also from allowing our players to become pros pretty damn young. Do you think that the NBA, we're already adopting a European style of play. Do you think we need to start adopting a little more European style of structure in sports in general? They do that with soccer and basketball, and it sure as hell's working in soccer.
Oh, I'm gonna be blasted for being un-American, but absolutely. The way it works in Europe, both in soccer, football, whatever they want to call it, and basketball, every major team has an academy for youth. They bring guys in, and they start teaching them when they're 12, 13, 11. They have youth leagues.
That's their middle school. That's their high school. That's what they do. They
get educated. They learn the game. They learn the system. It's not like AAU where it's all about playing, 4 million games a week or something. In the European system, it's about practice, it's about fundamentals, it's about development. And you maybe play once a week.
Now, I have to say, in the MLS, they are trying. There is an academy, I believe, for every single MLS franchise right now. Yes. The Red Bulls have an academy. It's not at the same level. They're not schools. They are, but they're not as high, they're not as highly thought of. But I believe one of the issues with America is we have options. We have so many options where we look at a great athlete and we don't have a national sport per se. Like soccer, rugby is a national sport in England. You either do one or the other. It's kind of what you start off with, and then if you suck at both, you figure something else out. That's kind of how it goes, where in America, I'm a runner. I ran track for Marist College. You see a midfielder playing soccer and you think they could be a great 800-meter runner. And then you convince him in high school to run some track. And then, boom, you find out that he's an amazing 800-meter runner and there goes soccer. Where that's something that wouldn't happen in Europe.
No, in Europe, they push you towards soccer, and if you outgrow it, you try basketball. And then you try something else.
Yeah, it's something, it's completely different, and it's great and it's terrible, because there the options are more limited. We have plenty of options, but at the same time, we see it hurting. We're going to branch off here, but it's okay on this tangent. I think all of our options are hurting the American pastime, baseball. We see such a lower number of participation from the inner city kids, and I think a major reason is because of all these options and because it's a lot easier to go to the park, pick up a basketball, take a football, and go out to a field than it is to lug around the equipment of a bat, gloves, and the safety portion of getting whaled by a baseball. I think all these things factor into, baseball declining, and the options are one of the main reasons.
When I was a kid, and I grew up in Newark until I was early teenage.
Hey, Jersey.
And when I was a kid, you couldn't go to a neighborhood and not find somebody playing a pickup baseball game somewhere. They were playing basketball on the hard courts, and they were playing baseball wherever there was grass.
And now most parks don't even have a backstop. Well, I remember I'm obviously younger than you, but
exactly.
I grew up, and all the parks around at least had a backstop and bases. It was mostly a softball size, but it was there, and you could play pickup baseball on that, no problem. Or at least home run derby, go hit some dingers, have something fun. Now you have to go to your little league fields, to your middle school, high school fields, because they just aren't there like they used to be. The backstops don't exist.
They organized the sport almost out of existence.
And it's terrible, and I believe it does have something, where it's weird because as we we do have options, but again, we are slowly turning into more of a single sport country with AAU, with the pushing of Little League and baseball. I think football is one of the ones that, you don't always have to be a football player, because if you're a good football coach, you encourage your athletes to do other things in the offseason because you want your big linemen to get better footwork, so you want them to go throw a shot put or be a big in basketball because it only improves them. Where other sports, it's no, do this sport only because we need to hone that skill. So it's a weird, it's, for me, I think Europe does it right in a way, but America's doing it wrong in a weird way.
For baseball, we priced the game out of the range of a lot of kids with these exclusive travel teams and these travel schedules that they play. You've eliminated a lot of the potential talent pool, pardon me, by making it only really accessible to the rich suburban kids.
Yeah, that's pretty awful. It should be, baseball's a simple sport. It should
really
be
is.
Such an easy sport for everyone to play.
And basketball, the influence of AAU and the apparel companies has turned it into something that it shouldn't be. It's hard to put your finger on what's wrong with it, but it seems to be that we're doing recruiting reports for 5th and 6th graders. And those guys are being identified as future stars, and they go into the AAU system as future stars. And whoever their handlers are, be it parents, relations, guy down the street that coached them on the hard court, whatever, they get so much influence that it skews the system really for a lot of other players.
Now, I have one example. I'm not going to name any names because, he was one of my favorite athletes. I went back for a little bit after college, coached at my local high school, both football, track, and field. I'm from Manchester, New Jersey.
Okay.
Coached at my local high school, and I had this one athlete who, he played football for the first time his senior year. Very athletic kid, about 6'2", 3. He played wide receiver for us. And when I tell you, there are very few kids with his size that could catch a 20-yard slant and average almost 50 to 60 yards each time, if not a touchdown. That type of skill. And we played in the Shore Conference, and the Shore Conference has brought out Donald Brown, Noshawn Moreno, just had Quentin Nelson drafted. So it's a big, good conference, a lot of talent. And he was that type of talent. Played basketball. He was our star guard. And he also was a jumper, and he set the school record in the triple jump and finished 3rd, I believe, at Meet of Champions, where none other than Carl Lewis was there coaching another athlete. And the influence of AAU and the influence of these coaches and people telling them constantly, from the worst player on the bench to the best player, you're great, you're going to be great, do basketball. He went with what I believe, he was a very talented basketball player. He went with his 3rd best sport, where I told him, I asked him flat out, I go, how many kids can dunk in AAU? He's like, all of them, coach. How many kids have your handles? A good amount. How about jumpers? I'm in the middle. But there's not many 6'2" athletes that could take a slant and always do that. He was a fantastic football player, but it's the influence, like you said, the influence of AAU, and I think the monetizing, where these coaches getting these kids to go to college get money out of it.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's that influence where he was a potential big-time football player that got robbed of that because of this current system.
Right. He got bad advice and followed it. He got bad advice from people that he trusted.
So we're going to go...
The people that he trusted weren't about the kid. They were about their own angle.
And it's unfortunate, and I think we see it way too often.
I hate the idea of young athletes being looked at as a commodity. Drives me insane.
And it's unfortunate that we're really putting that on them, and I think one and done has only made it worse. I think it was a lot better when we let 18-year-olds from high school go play because at least they can go make money right away. The one and done thing, it's so marketable to have a one and done that, we look at Coach K as the saint. He is probably the second best one and done coach. But Coach Calipari is so good at being the bad guy in Kentucky that Coach K is just the saint in Duke. That, he for some reason, he cares more about his one and dones and they get more education out of it in Duke than the guys in Kentucky for some reason.
Right.
That's our perception.
The sanctity of that 1 year of college education.
Of Duke. The sanctity of Duke. That 1 year at Duke over that 1 year at Kentucky where neither of them are doing anything. But it's just because it was that 1 year at Duke. It's better.
Right. And when you really look at it, okay, they're going to class for a semester. And they're staying eligible for the second semester, during which they're getting ready for the tournament, then they're getting ready for the draft. So, how often is little Johnny really going to class in the second semester of that 1 year?
And it's going to be funny, and I really feel like the NBA would be doing a lot of the schools a service, the major programs, if they get rid of the one and done, because it's only a matter of time before the NCAA cracks down and really investigates the academia portion of all these one and dones. Because if they really look into it, they're going to find a lot of managers doing the work of these one and dones. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. I'm just not so sure the NCAA is invested in looking into it too deeply beyond, the old joke that they're going to be so mad about what's happening at Kentucky and Duke and North Carolina that Jackson State's going to be on probation forever.
Well, no, they're just going to give SMU the death penalty again, just because. Why not?
Just because.
Why not?
You're there. You've done it before. You're there.
Yeah, you're done. So we're going to go back onto our tangent, even though that was, obviously something we're both passionate about. But
Good discussion. I like a good discussion.
Oh, I love it. I never deter from a good discussion on the podcast because, that's what it is. It's named Sports Opinions, for crying out loud. That's what it is.
It's a conversation,
Absolutely. So we're going to look, and we're going to go back over to the draft. We talked about our two guards that were our two forwards that we picked up, who I think can kind of play everywhere. I think they're going to be good for the Nets in the future. Musa was compared to Bogdanovich, I saw in one article, which would be great. But overall, what was your opinion of the whole draft? I listened to some of Sports Talk Radio today, and it was kind of a consensus that it was pretty boring, there weren't any big trades. It was kind of all, pretty expected, besides, I think, Trae Young and maybe Mikal Bridges kind of getting screwed. But besides that, what were your impressions of the draft?
There wasn't as much movement in terms of trades as we've seen in recent years. The Hawks did shake things up early with the Luka Doncic for Trae Young deal. The telecast felt like it dragged more than I remember.
I wasn't a fan of Chauncey Billups' comparisons, and I like Chauncey. I think Chauncey was a great player, but I didn't think his comparisons were on.
I actually tweeted at one point, at least Chauncey hasn't compared any player to Dolph Schayes yet. I mean, it felt like he just kept going further and further back.
Wasn't Jalen Rose doing that for a little bit? And I like Jalen Rose's comparisons a lot better.
Yeah. Part of the thing was they added the player introductions. That was a nice moment for the families to get to come across the stage with their guys.
Yes.
But, man, that was 30 minutes or so of non-refundable life for the rest of us. One thing of following the draft, I was watching it on TV, I was following it on Twitter. I was live tweeting from the Nothing But Nets account.
Yep.
Adrian Wojnarowski was the star of the draft.
He was hysterical because
oh my Lord, he knew what he was doing, and oh man, some of his descriptions were just awesome.
So just a little backdrop, if you didn't know, Adrian Wojnarowski, he works for ESPN now. For a long time he didn't, and when he wasn't working for ESPN, if you followed Twitter, you followed him, you knew each pick about 5 to 3 minutes beforehand. He would tell you what it was. He kind of took away the explosiveness. And ESPN and even the NBA didn't want him doing that anymore. They basically told him, you can't, you work for us now. You can't be giving up the picks right away. So
stop spoiling the draft.
So Wojnarowski does probably something that he might have to do for the rest of his career now. He might have screwed himself. But he, instead of saying who the pick was, he basically did little innuendos. Like, one of my favorite one, I think it was Utah Jazz laser
Utah
gun.
Jazz will be unable to resist.
Yeah, unable to resist Grayson Allen.
No, they will not pass on Grayson Allen.
And I think he even said, like, they laser beamed another player. Like, he just used...
Anthony Simons from Portland, they had a laser on him. The Lakers were going to be unable to resist Mo Wagner at 25. Philadelphia was enamored with the guy they took at 26. It got funnier as it went on.
I feel like he was just sitting there, and I feel like it was the one night where he could just sit by wherever he sits, watch some TV, has his phone ready in case he needs to break something, but either he has a beer, whiskey, sour, wine, whatever he drinks by his side, and he's watching it, and he's probably drinking a little, and just, as he's getting drunker, making these tweets more ridiculous.
Oh, it was definitely... He towed the line between not actually saying this is the pick and kind of giving the finger to his bosses and the NBA at the same time.
You know, he has to do this every year now. Even if he's allowed to ruin it again, he has to do this every year.
I'm Woj. You're not going to shut me down. This is what I do.
Yeah. You know? He became the Adam Schefter, the Chris Mortensen, the best. And, you know, Shams is trying to make his in routes, but there is no Woj. There's no one like him. There's the
Woj,
guy.
And then there's everybody else. And I love Shams.
Yeah. Oh, Shams is great.
Shams is great, and he's a great story.
Yes.
But Woj is still Woj. And you know, you get the Woj bomb. I'm a big NBA guy. And, you know, he has his own column on my tweet deck. Starting
July 1st, the notifications on Woj go on. Because that's when it starts. When free agency hits, if you don't have Shams and Woj, their notifications on, then you're going to be the last to know. Those two guys, you need to have them up.
Yeah, my wife already knows that around July 1st, my phone rings nonstop. And she just kind of shakes her head and accepts it. She knows I'm insane.
My battery dies. My battery dies by lunchtime. Every time.
I have... next to my desk, you know, because I actually do this kind of full time.
Yep.
From home, and on my desk I have one of those wireless chargers, that tray.
Yeah.
So when it starts to get low, I can just lay it on that, but still keep getting my notifications. You know, pick it up, okay, put it back down. Pick it up, okay, put it back down.
So going with that, my opinion of the draft, and you know, you can disagree with me if you want. But I looked at it, and with DeAndre Ayton going first, you know, everyone's convinced that he's going to be the greatest, you know, best guy in this draft. Bagley going second. It really seemed to me that it's a fad-driven league. And we saw what Joel Embiid has become, and even Ben Simmons. These bigger guys, you know, Embiid's a freak athlete that has range. Ben Simmons is this bigger point guard. And it seems like we're really going towards that fad. And DeAndre Ayton and both Bagley and even Mo Bamba, to me, they're all guys that these teams hope become Anthony Davis, hope become Joel Embiid. And I love the Arizona Wildcats. I've been a Wildcats fan. I from Jersey, so I follow Rutgers, everything, but there's nothing to follow in basketball or football. So I've liked the Wildcats forever when I was younger. And it's kind of, I didn't see it from Ayton when it came down to the most important parts of the season, and that scared me. And when it comes to Bagley, I don't know what Duke guys are going to be because there's so many of them at this point, and I feel like they're such an overpowered team where Coach K picks his one guy that he's going to make the best star in the world, and he goes with him. Coach Cal does it. He picks his one guy, Calipari, makes him the best player on the planet, and that's that. Where Coach K kind of spreads the love, even amongst his one-and-dones. So with Bagley, and he's very undersized and skinny, I feel like Bagley has a much more potential of a Nerlens Noel that can shoot than a Joel Embiid. Ayton, I'm not too sure on. Mo Bamba, I don't see him being much better than Jarrett Allen besides better range his rookie year. That's just me in terms of his style of play. I just really think teams are trying to go for this new fad of the center now that can stretch out more and be an athlete like Joel Embiid. Am I wrong in what they're trying to get at there?
No, everybody, the unicorn. That's what everybody wants. They want the unicorn.
The Latvian unicorn without the injuries.
Without the injuries and without the Latvian. Hold the latte or the Latvia. You want that 7-foot guy who can stretch. That's what everybody's after. That's what they're hoping for. Mo Bamba, with him, he's going to make a good living for a lot of years because he can protect the rim like a madman, and he can rebound well. He's got better size than the other two. As far as Ayton and the defensive knocks, okay,
From Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid's tweet was magic.
It really was. On the other hand, what does your center really have to do in Arizona's defensive system with Buffalo hitting 4 million threes?
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were doing all that damage inside.
That's true.
Their perimeter defenders couldn't guard an oak tree that night.
But Ayton's scoring wasn't there, and he was the most prolific scorer,
right.
Especially as a big man, and he had good range. He froze on the offensive end. The defensive end was kind of out of his hands, but you expect your star, especially when he doesn't have to work as hard on defense, to put up big numbers on offense and bring you past that. They were a favorite to win it all, and they floundered.
Nate Oates did some things defensively to Ayton that he hadn't seen.
No, not at all. Yeah.
He did some things. I love Nate Oates, okay, as a coach. He did some things with some guys that I wouldn't have thought he could have done it with. He threw some looks defensively that I'm watching and just going, I've been watching this game for 45 years and I've never seen anything like that. Holy cow. So,
well, he had to be. He had to be creative against a player of Ayton's caliber.
And he did. And then Arizona, as young teams will do, teams that are dependent on underclassmen will do.
Who isn't dependent on underclassmen anymore in the NCAA?
And when it starts to go bad, it goes really bad.
Unless you're Villanova.
Have maturity to dig in.
Unless you're Villanova, who builds off maturity and guys that stay 3 to 4 years and wins championships under J-Rod.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a little scared with this fad. I feel like this draft may have a lot more Donovan Mitchells in the middle, where we see the true talent coming out amongst the mid-lane guys. And I don't know how many all-stars really come from this draft.
I like what Phoenix did with Ayton and then trading for Mikal Bridges. I like that.
Yes.
I thought Philadelphia had a terrific night considering they didn't have a GM.
Without a doubt.
The Knicks did well, I thought. Kevin Knox is a solid pick.
Kevin Knox, yeah. I think Kevin Knox could be one of the better players from this draft.
Here's the one that's me going out on my limb. This is the hill I'll die on. Memphis may have gotten the best of the bigs when it's all said and done.
Really?
Jaren Jackson Jr. has a game that seems more in line with what the league is today.
He does. He
can block shots. He can defend. He can shoot the ball out to the line. And he's not so tall and thin that he's going to get pushed around. There's some substance to him. I think when it's all said and done, he may be the best of them.
Now, his question is his motor. And is his motor going to be able to go for the 30-plus minutes for 82 games? He has a little bit of the Dwight Howard in him where the ability's there, but the effort isn't always there. Do you think he will step it up at the NBA level?
I do. I think he's been waiting to get here.
And that would be great for Memphis and Marc Gasol and Conley.
His dad was a hard-working player.
Yes.
I remember watching Jaren Jackson play. He was an undrafted guy, and he worked his butt off to get into the league, and was a rotation guy for a championship team. He knows what it takes to come into the league from the other direction, and I just don't see him letting his kid blow it by being, a lazy worker.
One can hope, because if he does work hard, you said he has all the tools and the potential to get there and be great. Now, my question mark is the guy who's a question mark of the draft. Michael Porter Jr. fell down to number 14 to the Denver Nuggets. Smart value, great pick at 14 for the Nuggets. Porter said some boneheaded stuff leading up to here with comparing himself to the greats and, all this with being the best. Like, he's very more braggadocious than I ever expected him to be. In terms of the tools, if you watch him play in high school and everything that is said from him, he could actually, he's another guy could end up being the best out of this class. Does the type of things that he's been saying scare you, though?
They did until one moment last night. After he got picked, and he was asked about what, sliding all the way down to 14, I thought he gave the best answer I heard all night. Nobody's entitled to anything. Once we're all on the floor, it will take care of itself.
That is a solid. I missed that. That is a solid answer. He was my favorite player, actually, going into the draft.
I was not expecting that. I really was not expecting that after the, I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm Kevin Durant, I'm all these other guys that nobody else ever compared me to.
And also, can we get this out there? I hate comparisons because I can't stand when they do these greats comparisons because bottom line is, if Trae Young is going to get as good as Steph Curry, no one's going to go Trae Young, Steph Curry. Everyone's going to go, that's Trae Young. So when you compare them to these greats, when they get compared to these greats, if they're going to get to that level, we're going to forget that we ever compared them to them. No one is saying that Steph Curry is Reggie Miller, and Ray Allen, but that's who he was compared to with his great shooting ability. But no, he is Steph Curry. And now he's in the conversation with those two as one of the greatest shooters of all time. So I hate these comparisons of who these guys can be. No, they are them. Donovan Mitchell isn't Russell Westbrook. He's established himself as Donovan Mitchell. And he's here to stay. So I hate
comparisons. I won't do comparisons. I may reference comparisons that other people have done. But I really don't play the comparison game.
No, not at all. We're Nets fans right now.
I may say that parts of a guy's game reminds me of another player that I saw.
Right.
But I'm not just going to say, wow, that player is this player. Because that's just lazy.
Well, yeah, I was listening to the radio today again, and I think it was Evan Roberts, who was our Nets shining star in the WFAN. And only Nets fan that sticks up for us. Jerry Recco never says anything about them positive. But he went out there and he said, Kenneth Faried was supposed to be the next Dennis Rodman. We saw how that worked out. Kenneth Faried is now on the brink of possibly being a Net if we decide to take on his salary. You know what I mean? It's something that how far he's fallen. So
right. I mean, I think you can evaluate a guy's skill set and break it down into different parts. A guy may have a crossover move that reminds you of player A, but he may have a jumper that reminds you of player B. So don't pigeonhole him into one.
Exactly. It's not
every
even.
Player is going to have pieces of every different player.
And
then they're going to have some things that are going to be unique.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if you look at it, LeBron James is the perfect example of a player that has probably a little bit of every great that we've ever seen. In terms of, and his best comparisons to me are guys that, I really didn't get to see play. I see him more as being an Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson type of player than Michael Jordan. His comparisons are always to Michael, but he's a big point guard. Let's be realistic. LeBron James is the best point guard in the NBA. And
Bill Simmons was actively writing. There was one thing that he referred to LeBron James as that stuck with me. The evolutionary Magic Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Magic Johnson for a larger, bigger, stronger, more athletic generation. And that totally makes sense.
It makes sense. And my thing with LeBron, too, and I've said this for years, I have never seen a single player in the NBA that he would be top 5 in any of the 5 positions he chose to focus on. If he chose to be a center, he would be a top 5 center in the NBA at 6'9". If possibly not the best in this NBA, he would be the most dominant center. And obviously he's played power forward and small forward. He's the best at both of those. He's probably the best point guard in the league when he takes the ball up. Shooting guard might be the only one where he maybe sits at 5 because he's not a great 3-point shooter. But again, he'd be top 5 in terms of his scoring ability. And I've never seen another player. Michael certainly couldn't be top 5 at all 5 positions. He'd get beat up down low. Kobe couldn't do that. It's something that a player that we've 100% have never seen before, and he's fit up to all the billing that he had from a high schooler. He's lived up to every single portion of it.
Yeah, and the thing about LeBron is that he actually played the 2 when he was a rookie.
Which is crazy to think that, he was so skinny. If you look back at that LeBron, he was muscular for an 18-year-old, but he was a rail compared to what he is.
Yeah.
And speaking of LeBron, that's going to segue. We're going to go a little more rapid fire because we're going to kind of get to the close of this.
Some here.
Yeah. So where's LeBron go? I'm not even going to give you teams. Gut check. Where's LeBron go this year?
Okay, I have no idea this time around. Honestly, I don't. I was pretty sure he was leaving Cleveland in 2010. That loss to Boston in the playoffs really seemed like an ending. Not completely shocked when he went back to the Cavaliers in 14. This time I just had no real feel for it. He could stay. He could go to the Lakers like so many seem to think he's going to, or there could be a wild card option no one's talking about at this point. There's just so many moving parts there right now.
Now, I don't think the Lakers are realistic. I don't care what anyone says. I know he has his 2 houses in L.A. and all this and that with family and stuff. The Lakers don't have enough. Why would he go there and compete with the Rockets and the Sixers? I mean, not the Sixers, and the Golden State Warriors before he has to. I don't think he would. I don't care if Kawhi and Paul George go there. Doesn't make a difference to me. To me, I think his 3 options are he's going to stay in the East. I don't think he's leaving. I think he stays in Cleveland if they bring another piece, goes to the Philadelphia, or goes back to Miami. Those are my 3. So,
yeah, I could see any of those.
So those are my options. So also, a little more rapid fire. Who do the Nets target? I think that they're going to throw some pretty hefty contracts at both Jabari Parker and Aaron Gordon during restricted free agency to kind of do what they did to Portland and to Miami, where force them to match it and put them in cap hell for the next few years, because that's all Sean Marks wanted to do to both of those 2 teams. I think he does that to both the Bucks and the Magic. I think if we get Aaron Gordon, the money will be worth it because I think he's a great player. And he just hasn't had the chance to show his talents because he's down there in Orlando.
Parker and the paper mache knees scare the hell out of me.
It does.
But Aaron Gordon, I definitely think. The thing is, though, is there's only going to be about $9 million in cap space available once all the renouncements happen and the Howard deal shakes out. So it could make it a little difficult to go get a big ticket guy this summer.
But I never doubt Sean Marks. I never doubt what he can do, and you know what? And that might also predicate on moving Spencer Dinwiddie. If he really wants to go after one of those guys, I know Spencer doesn't have a big cap number, but moving him will then probably get us over the $10 million mark, closer to $11 million, and that's much more reasonable for some of these mid-level stars.
I think keeping Joe Harris is a priority, though.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. His development and his clutch, and he's the type of guy at the end of the game you want him shooting a 3. So,
and if there's a backup big to be had out there, I think either Ed Davis from Portland or Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers.
Yes, I think I like Montrezl Harrell.
I think either one of those guys would be a good piece to put behind Jared Allen.
All right, and last thing on the NBA, any other big names you see moving? Chris Paul's a free agent, Durant's a free agent, either DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, John Wall, Kemba Walker. Any other big names you see moving that could shake up everything after LeBron James?
Don't see Paul George staying in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
There were some rumblings today about some discord between Chris Paul and the Rockets that's worth keeping an eye on.
Chris Paul to Cleveland. LeBron stays.
The DeMarcus Cousins to Dallas buzz could be a thing.
Ooh.
Donnie Nelson got his guy last night with Doncic. And Cousins to Dallas could take some of the playing center prop weight off of Nowitzki. I think the restricted free agent market is going to be where a lot of the action is, because there's just not a lot of teams with a lot of cap space. You mentioned Gordon, you mentioned Jabari Parker, Julius Randle is another one that could get, have an address change. Isaiah Thomas is a wild card out there.
Now, question for you too.
He can be great in the right situation. We saw that in Boston. He can be a disaster in the wrong situation. We saw that in Cleveland, to some extent in Phoenix. So,
where does our main man Brook Lopez land?
Oh,
because he's a free agent, and If he is under the right price, I would love to have him finish out his career in a Brooklyn uniform.
That would be nice, but he would have to settle for a lot less than he could get.
I think just for the emotional side of it, I really feel like Brook Lopez may do that if he has a chance to sign with a contender, because he's also a guy that I thought may go to Dallas. Because, he's not the bumper and grinder, but he is a more physical player than Dirk, and his three-point shooting ability opens up the floor for them as well.
That's a development I never saw coming.
Right?
Brook Lopez becoming a stretch.
Yeah, really, and that's the beauty of Kenny Atkinson. And Jarrett Allen is working on his threes, so let's watch him. He was shooting corner threes last year, and he's working on getting better range. Kenny Atkinson stretches everybody out.
And that's a great thing in today's league.
It's what you need. We're European now. So we're going to move completely different direction, because one thing I learned about you, Phil, is you love basketball, but you're not only basketball. You like other sports. So we're going to jump to a team that we both share liking, the New York Yankees. We're going to move through them with a little bit of pace because they kind of speak for themselves. They're on an amazing run. They reached 50 wins. They're on their way to 51, I believe. They're down 2-0 to the Rays. But it's the Rays. They're going to probably end up winning this one because that's what the Yankees do.
Yankees will be able to come back against their 11th pitcher.
Absolutely. They'll come from behind and they'll be just fine. And it's very reminiscent of 98-96 where it didn't matter what the score was. The Yankees were always in it, especially if there was an out in the ninth, they could beat you. Can they maintain this run? Can they make a magical season like a 98-96?
I think they can. They can flat out mash, and that's the name of the game today.
Oh, yeah.
And they have power arms in the pen, in the rotation. Yeah, I definitely think that they can maintain this run.
So out of everyone, Luis Severino, Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres, Andujar, even Jonathan Holder now coming up, Aaron Boone and his great start as a rookie manager, what's been the most impressive part of this team?
The consistency, both at the plate and on the mound. The modern game is all about the home run. No team does it better than New York. 122 homers in 72 games coming into today. 5.3 runs a game, tops in baseball. And the pitching has been good as well. They're only giving up one home run per nine. Second in the bigs, 10.2 strikeouts per nine. Whip of 1.147, third in the majors.
Very underrated and just like they were last year.
Yeah. I mean, they've just been consistent across the board.
And I can't remember the last series, like regular season series that they've lost this year. I don't think they've lost one. They might have tied some.
They may have had some splits, but I don't know if they've lost one outright.
Yeah, and to me that's huge because if you can win or split all of your series, you're well over 100 wins and you're having a magical season. They haven't had anything more than maybe a 2-game slide, which is unbelievable so far through 70-plus games.
If you can avoid those long losing streaks, everything else takes care of itself because those losing streaks take a lot out of a team.
Avoid being the Mets.
They really do because it becomes a state of mind. It becomes a mental thing.
So,
and,
yeah.
A baseball season is a long, grueling mental grind as it is. And if you can limit the damage to only losing, 2, maybe 3 at a time, you're going to be okay.
So, speaking of Europe, I wrote a piece on the Sports Opinions blog that I think that Major League Baseball should take aggregate scoring. And with the way they would do it is every series would be scored on an aggregate. And at the end of the series, the total runs would be then the aggregate win or loss or tie for either team. And then that could be the first tiebreaker at the end of the year would be your aggregate win-loss. What do you think of that, making it a little more European? Because I think it makes the mid-season where it gets really boring. Like, if the Yankees weren't good, this is a boring mid-season. Because every MLB season is boring unless the Yankees or the Sox are really good. So, with those boring times in the year, I feel like it would make them a little more excited and it would make teams have to use better players than they use. What would you think of an aggregate scoring system for the regular season?
It would take away the throwaway games for sure.
Which is awesome.
Which is good. Those games where you get behind 5 runs and it's a travel day and blah, 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 and you just pack it in. Clear the bench, clear the bullpen, everybody gets to play. Let's sure sits well with the American sporting public is any mention of a tie ever.
Yes.
They get completely dismantled at the idea that a game could, or any sort of a contest could end even. That just blows people's minds.
Which is bizarre. Because, ties exist. People need to get over it. I would just like the fact that you could lose a 3-game series, 2 games to 1, but if you win that last game 10-1 and you lost the other 2, 2-3 and 1-3, you just at least scored an aggregate win, and it gives the teams the reason to fight harder, especially those bubble playoff teams.
Right. No, I think it could work. I just don't know if the American sporting public is ready for that kind of mind-blowing math.
Hey, MLS is getting bigger and bigger. They keep on expanding, and that means that they're making money, and that's in spite of the United States men team being an embarrassment. So, and needing the automatic bid in 2026 probably to get in.
Yeah.
Well, first we need a coach, and the fact that Sam Allardyce or whatever, he was the English coach, and he was interested, and we haven't hired him yet, kind of blows my mind, because he would have been a great pick following Jurgen Klinsmann, and Bruce Arena, and who was an epic failure. We just need to stop recycling some of these older players that don't work anymore. Bradley, Dempsey, Altidore, Howard, they all need to go away. The new wave.
It is a young man's game.
Yeah, guys like Wood, guys like Pulisic, they need to lead the charge, and it would be so much better if we were like other countries where it was, okay, the old guard's done, maybe bring them on for a cap or two, but the young guard needs to make some wins, unless we get a superstar. That's it.
Right, yeah. Oh, we got a friendly, let's bring the old guys back for a feel-good game.
Exactly.
We need to win this game, those guys are staying home.
Exactly. But we're the Americans, and Americans don't think that way. Americans, we just kind of do things our way, and it doesn't work in the world stage in soccer. So,
well, yeah, American fans have this crazy idea that loyalty exists in professional sports.
Insane, right?
I will argue till I'm blue in the face that there is no loyalty in professional sports.
And there doesn't have to be. It's about making money on all ends.
And
that's the bottom line.
Money and winning games.
Yes. And I do have to say, we're on the soccer topic. For soccer, the greatest thing the MLS has ever done is putting 2 teams in the Northwest, in Portland and Seattle, because there is no place in the country that loves their soccer more than those 2. And that has driven up the numbers of the MLS and the popularity of the MLS to levels that they didn't think they could get this quickly. So that is a big plus.
And it's a beautiful built-in rivalry at the same time.
Built-in rivalry, and they're just insane. The Seattle Sounders and Portland Timbers are insane.
They love to hate each other up there.
And I'm a Red Bull, and I'm a contradictory because I'm a Red Bulls fan. I grew up a Metro Stars fan. I went with the Red Bulls, but I'm a Man City fan when it comes to the EPL. And then Man City had to come and make NYCFC and make me hate them. I still love Man City. I hate NYCFC, which is contradictory in itself because I'm still loyal to my Red Bulls. And I can't like the new team on the block. I'm not going to switch because I'm a City fan. So it's kind of screwed up.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's like the people that ask me how I can still be a Nets fan after all these years.
Oh, everyone asks me that. Why are you a Nets fan? Why are you a Knicks fan? They've stunk for the last 2 decades. The Nets have had more success if you really look at it.
I've got the ultimate Knicks fan drives an insane line.
We had that 50-win season. Yeah, what'd you do with it? We went to 2 straight finals. Yeah, we lost to 2 of the better teams, especially that Lakers team is one of the best in history. Oh, and that Spurs team was unbelievable too.
Ground up. I'm just surprised that the Knicks haven't retired Hawthorne Wingo's number yet, since they seem to have retired anybody who played more than 5 minutes for the 1970 or 73 teams.
Well, because, that was the best. And, Knicks fans, and I love it, they are still bitter that Patrick Ewing never won a championship. That's what they're bitter about.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. They are bitter. The people in my generation that saw Patrick Ewing, that was their big guy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, I'm a Nets fan, but I do root for the Knicks when they were good. When Linsanity happened, they won 50 games. Hell yeah. They were a decent team. The Nets were okay, but I wasn't mad about them being good. Knicks fans hate to see the Nets playing well. They hate it. Nothing makes them happier than when the Nets suck. And even though we were even with them last year, Knicks fans will still walk with their chest out like they're so much better than the Nets. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they finished, 4 games ahead? 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5 games ahead. And you can, if you listen to ESPN New York or The Fan, they act like the Knicks are the only team in town and they were so much better than the Nets. And if the Nets get mentioned, it's a scoff. It's like, come on, the Knicks haven't been good in years. In years. Since Pat Riley and Jeff Van Gundy. And are you kidding me? You're really going to you're going to sit there and try and tell me, who's had actually good teams and great players, Melo isn't as good as Vince Carter was. I'm sorry. We've had a better player in the past 2 decades. Come on.
Yeah. Well, we had Jay Kidd when he was in his prime.
Yeah, Jay Kidd. We had Richard Jefferson when he was in his prime. Kenyon Martin lived up to being the number 1 draft pick. Because people forget, Lob City existed in New Jersey long before it was in L.A.
Long before it was in L.A. Because you had Jefferson, you had Carter, you had, all those guys could just fly to the rim.
And then we had guys like Kerry Kittles, who was a fantastic scorer that people don't give him credit for. Role players like Lucius Harris and Keith Van Horn. It's just a bevy of players that were very good.
Yeah. But
we're the Nets, so we don't get that credit.
Nope.
We're just a couple of Nets fans complaining on a podcast.
There were worse flights.
Oh, man. And we're going to jump on the last topic. It'll be pretty quick, but we're going to jump through it. You're also a Giants fan. I'm a Jets fan, so I'll excuse you. I'm the miserable one here because you have championships, so I'm going to kind of take a seat. But the Giants, a little bit of a fold, a few questions here. Odell Beckham Jr., he wants a new contract. He was injured all last year. Coming in this year, he said all the right things. He's been a mature player. He's come to camp faithfully. He's not holding out. He said all the right things publicly. As a fan, has he showed you enough that he deserves to get this extension and take on this leadership role, and you feel confident with him being a leader?
I need to see a little bit more before I've decided he's turned the corner. I mean, give me a full turn of the calendar without anything stupid, and we can talk.
Now, he's never done anything bad off the field. I've been an Odell Beckham defender. I thought he deserved to be suspended more when he had that little scuffle of immaturity on the field with Josh Norman, when he threw fists at him, when he ran across the field to attack him. That type of stuff doesn't belong in the game. But it was in the game. It wasn't anything outside the field, outside the court. He doesn't get in trouble with the law. Yeah, he does dumb stuff on the sideline, but that's not a big deal to me. No teammates have ever really gone at him. He's kind of a baby, but I don't see why so many fans want him traded. I think it's the dumbest thing Giants fans say right now. Trade Odell.
I don't want him traded. I do not want him traded, but I want to see 1 year of completely professional behavior before I commit to throwing the bank at him. That's all.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Antonio Brown gets that pass. He's not very professional, but because he's so good and he plays for the Steelers, we kind of look past that.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're divas. I accept the fact that they're divas, that wide receivers, if you want a great one, he's probably going to come with baggage. They're not all Tim Brown and Jerry Rice. They're not all great and just do their job. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a tough position because everything you do is dependent on everybody else.
Yes.
The line has to do its job and the quarterback has to do his job in order for you to have a chance to do yours. So it does tend to breed some moodiness.
And speaking of that, Eli Manning, after that weird situation last year where I agreed with the benching at the point where they were, but to bench him and not bring in Davis Webb and bring in Geno Smith instead is what put a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't disagree with the benching. I thought talking about his streak was stupid because what's a streak if he might get hurt out there? I don't mind him coming back and starting again this year. What do you think he has left in the tank? And with the addition of Nate Solder, who got injured and hopefully he's back, and Will Hernandez on the offensive line, are they going to be good enough to open up holes for Saquon Barkley and give Eli Manning enough time?
I think they will be. Barkley is young. He's a young stud running back who's fresh enough to make some things happen on his own. Eli is smart in the pocket, but he turned 37 in January. He doesn't take a lot of hits, and that's a good thing for him. But the offense can't get bogged down in only being able to throw the ball 3 or 4 yards downfield at a time. You know, the dink and dunk express is not going to win you ball games. And last year he had his worst year as a starter, bar none. Second worst.
But he had no one to throw to, and the line was awful, and they gave up on the running game, and I thought Wayne Gallman was much more talented than they gave him credit for. I like him, and they gave up on it every game.
And you know, and they had problems at receiver because of injuries. Beckham was hurt. They were bringing in new wide receivers, it seemed like every other week. And between receivers who couldn't get separation and a line that couldn't provide any time, all they had was dink and dunk.
You guys were the New York Jets on offense.
Yeah.
When Mark Sanchez and Geno Smith ran the show. That's what you guys were.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were.
We had a running game, though. That's all we had.
But Eli's been relatively healthy for most of his career, and hey, Tom Brady just won an MVP at 40, so I think there's still something left there.
Absolutely. And so the line, so my last question to you is, the defense was great 2 years ago, was a stinker last year and a big problem. With McAdoo gone, with a new GM in Gettleman, with Pat Shurmur there, can this defense make a turnaround and come back and earn their money? Because they're still paid a lot of money this year. The $100 million defense didn't go away. It's still there.
It's still there.
Can they turn the corner again?
They're going to run mostly nickel, okay?
Yep.
60-70% of the time they're going to be in the nickel.
And that's going to help Eli Apple because he's a nickel corner. That's his natural.
There, they're going to incorporate some 3-4 looks as a change of pace.
Okay.
They're going to blitz. They're going to play cover one more than most teams do now. That could be good for Landon Collins. That could be good for Damon Harrison. The depth on the line is a concern, especially early because of Josh Morrow's suspension.
Yes.
But there has to be some confidence that someone out of that group of Avery Moss, Romeo Aquaro, Kerry Wynn is going to step up at the end, or they don't do the JPP deal. So I think the defense will be okay. So I like the new philosophy.
So your record prediction for the Giants, are they going to usurp the Eagles and win the division? Wild card, what's your record for them?
Since just about anything would be an improvement, I think 9-7 and in the wild card hunt isn't out of reach.
I think at best you guys are 11-5, at worst 8-8. I think that's really where you guys are right now.
Yeah, I think realistically, right around the middle, 9-7, and in the wild card hunt. Hey, we won a Super Bowl from that once, so
there you go. But all right, with that concludes this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast. I want to thank Phil for coming on. Phil Watson, thank you very much for coming on.
Enjoyed it a lot, Alex.
And Phil, again, tell everyone where they can find you.
Okay, the website, nothingbutnets.com. No G in nothing. I'm on Twitter at PhilWatsonFS. The website is on Twitter at NetsBlogFS. And you can also find us on Facebook at NothingButNetsFS.
All right, and again, I am Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter at @A_Cuesta30. You can find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. And I just want to thank everyone again for listening. If you're listening, you're either listening from iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio. Spread the word. We have great podcasts like this on every week. Great guests like Phil on every week. And it's lots of fun. So again, Phil, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
It was a great time. Glad to be here, Alex.
Awesome. And this was the Sports Opinions Podcast. Have a good one.